Welcome back, you guys. Today we're mixing things up and we're doing something a bit out of the ordinary. I think you guys know by now I love butter. I hold it very near and dear to my heart and I love using it in my cake recipes. But today we're going to actually be using olive oil as the fat in this cake. So this layer cake is actually a play on a classic Italian olive oil cake. I've made a few adjustments that we can make it into layers that can be stacked and that are nice and sturdy. But I'm still playing up all those classic flavors, which of course come from a good quality olive oil. And I'm also incorporating some lemon, which I think pairs really well with it. So this recipe also uses regular milk, which is pretty rare for my cake recipes. I love buttermilk as well. But the tang and the moisture that buttermilk adds, you don't really need in this cake because it already has so much flavor from the olive oil. I'm going to walk you through all the steps of how I make the batter, and then as the cake layers bake, we can make the frosting together. The first step is to add 2 eggs and 1 cup of sugar into the bowl of our stand mixer. I'm going to whisk these together on a high speed for about 2 minutes. So you can see the egg and sugar mixture is now pretty thick, and it's definitely changed colors. It's a nice light pale yellow. So I'm going to scrape around the bowl a little bit just to make sure that all the sugar is really getting mixed in. And I'm going to give it one more quick stir. So now that our eggs and our sugar has been beat to a great consistency, I'm going to combine my dry ingredients into one bowl and my wet ingredients into another. Normally I try not to use this many bowls. I really like to reduce the amount of dishes I have to wash at the end. But with this cake, the olive oil makes it a little bit denser, and I wanted to mix it as little as possible. By pre-mixing the wet ingredients and the dry ingredients, it kind of helps everything come together more quickly, and you can therefore mix the batter less, which helps make the cake less dense. So I'm going to go ahead and start combining my 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and of course 1 teaspoon of salt. I really love this because it's so easy to remember 1 teaspoon of each of those ingredients. So I'm giving my dry ingredients a good stir, and now that those are fully incorporated, I'm going to work on my wet ingredients. So I'm adding a half a cup of fresh squeezed lemon juice, and that took about 4 small lemons. So a quick tip when you're trying to squeeze lemon juice, take your lemon and roll it on the counter like this. It makes it so much easier to juice lemons. I'm also going to be adding 1 tablespoon of lemon zest. When you're zesting a lemon, I just use a little microplane grater like this. Just be sure that you're not focusing too hard in one area. You just want to be getting the surface of the lemon. If you go for too long in one area, you're going to start getting into the white area of the peel, which actually has a bitter taste. So just don't go too crazy. Make sure you're rotating the lemon a lot as you're zesting. And it took me about 2 lemons this size to get 1 tablespoon of lemon zest. So next I'm going to add a half a cup of just whole milk. And then our last ingredient is 2/3 of a cup of olive oil. So when I picked out my olive oil, I was looking for a few different things. Number 1, I wanted the bottle to be a shade of green or a dark green because that helps protect the olive oil from sunlight, which can damage the taste. I also look for extra virgin olive oil, which has to do with how much the olive oil is processed. And when it's extra virgin, it means it's not processed a bunch, it has a really great fruity flavor, and that's exactly what we're after in this cake. Other important things are that it has a harvest and an expiration date. So that's not necessary, but it's really great to know when the olives were picked. And then the expiration date will usually be about 2 years after that. So those are great things to look for when you're trying to pick out an olive oil. If you're picking one from another country, it can be a DPO stamp from Italy, from the EU, or even from the USDA. So looking for those types of things are really great indicators that you're picking a high quality olive oil. Without further ado, I'm going to finally add the olive oil into the cake. So I'm adding 2/3 of a cup. Alright, so now that we have all of our wet ingredients together, I'm going to give them a quick stir, and then we're going to start incorporating them into our sugar and egg mixture. So we're going to start by adding 1/3 of our dry ingredients into our egg mixture. We're just going to stir this on a low speed. I'm going to give the mixture a quick stir just to get everything incorporated. You don't want any bits of flour stuck on the side. So we're definitely ready to add some of our wet ingredients now. I'm going to pour in half of these. You can smell that olive oil, it smells so good. Alright, so you can see our batter is starting to look nice and smooth. So I'm now repeating this process with my remaining wet and dry ingredients, and I'm going to finish with my dry ingredients. So now that our batter is all ready to go, I'm going to evenly divide it between my 6-inch cake pan. I've lined my pans with some parchment paper, and I also gave them a quick spray of non-stick cooking spray. So now I'm going to just go ahead and pour our batter in. So I've done my best job estimating my cake batter between the pans, but to ensure that they have the same amount of batter, I like to use my handy dandy kitchen scale. I'm just going to weigh my pans and make sure they have a similar amount of batter. I usually give myself a margin of error of about 10 grams. So this is 480 grams. This one is 445, so that needs a little bit more. And this one is 492. I'm going to take a little bit out of the pan that has the most. Just going to scoop it right into our pan that needs a little bit more love. And then we'll remeasure these to make sure they're all the same. So I'm going to pop these into my 350-degree preheated oven, and then we'll get going on the frosting. So the base of this frosting is just going to be my classic American buttercream. We've got butter, salt, vanilla, powdered sugar, and a little bit of heavy cream. I also mixed in some room temperature cream cheese and lemon juice and lemon zest to take this frosting to the next level. So my cake layers now are cool to touch, so we're ready to level these. Sometimes I like to trim the sides of my cakes, but not today because we are making a semi-naked cake. We want that caramelization to be there to create that beautiful look once it's frosted. So to level these cake layers, I'm going to take my serrated knife and I'm just going to cut right across. I like to hold my knife parallel to my counter and kind of figure out where I want to cut, and then keep my elbow close to my body so that I'm not going up and down a lot. I'm staying in the same position. And then I just rotate the cake slowly as I spin. So as you rotate, you're slowly cutting in towards the center, and this is going to help you get a really nice and level cut across the cake layer. As you're doing this, you're not applying a lot of pressure. You're really letting the knife just kind of work through the cake layer, and you're being very mindful of where your fingers are in relation to the knife. You do not want to rush this. So once you get to the center, your cake top will just kind of pop off, and you'll have a nice clean cut. So you can see we have a perfectly level cake there. It's beautiful, it's ready to be stacked. So I've added a dab of buttercream onto my cake board, and this is just going to help secure our cake layer to our cake board. These are 100% room temperature, so they're quite soft. That means that as I do this, more crumbs are going to come up, so I'm going to be very careful as I'm spreading the frosting. I also am not adding a ton of frosting between these cake layers, and that's because traditional olive oil cakes aren't really sweet. They don't have as much sugar as a lot of my normal cake recipes, and they also definitely normally don't have frosting. So I don't want to overload this cake with a ton of frosting. I just want a little bit of sweetness between each cake layer. But again, it all comes down to preference, and you can add however much you'd like. Alright, so I'm going to pop this into the freezer to allow it to set a little bit more, and then we'll work on some very simple decorations for it. So I brought 1 cup of water and 1 cup of sugar to a boil, turned down the heat, and then added in a thinly sliced lemon. So I removed the seeds before I added them into the water, and I'm now letting them simmer for about an hour until those peels start to get clear. So this is the part where you need a little bit of patience. You can also make these in advance. So once my lemon slices had the peel turn translucent just like this, I took them off the stove and I'm just placing them on a parchment-lined baking sheet. So this is just going to help them dry out a little bit before we add them onto the top of our cake. So now it is time to decorate this cake. And for some reason, I really felt drawn to rosemary. And I know that this is normally a savory ingredient, but I just thought it would look so beautiful around the base of the cake. So this is totally decorative. You're not supposed to eat this, and you can totally skip this step if this is just too much for you. As much as I'm into the taste of the cake, I love the aesthetics aspect as well. So I think this is just a really fun way to add a pop of color. Now it's time to add our candied lemon onto our cake. So we're just going to make a ring around the top of the cake with these. So we'll just tuck that under there. And just like that, our lemon olive oil cake is complete. And now it's time for the best part, the taste test. Just look at how amazing those cake layers look. They're so light and fluffy, and they're packed with fruity flavor from the olive oil and the lemon. So don't forget, you guys, the recipe for this cake is up on Chelsweets.com. So if you're looking to try something a little bit more adventurous or outside of your comfort zone, or if you just love olive oil cake, I highly recommend this recipe. It's fantastic. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and hopefully I'll see you guys again soon.